Als nächstes haben wir nämlich hier ein ganz spannendes Thema auf der Bühne. Wir begrüßen zum einen Arianna Nicoletti, die zum einen das Upcycling-Label Alyk gegründet hat, die Co-Founderin ist von Green Fashion Tours Berlin, mit der wir Green Fashion Tours nach München gebracht haben, die ein Mitglied von Future Fashion Forward ist, die für Fashion Revolution in Deutschland zuständig sind, die letztes Jahr eingeladen wurde zu einer Residency im Victoria and Albert Museum, um zum Thema Kreislauf, Circular Fashion zu forschen. Und Arianna wird uns heute, er hat uns einen Gast mitgebracht, Mila Moisio von Tauko, ein finnisches Label in Helsinki, spezialisiert auf Recycling-Projekte und großartige Mode, die mit sehr viel Tiefgang und Sinn, und dafür ist Mila gerade ausgezeichnet worden als Best Sustainable Project vom British Council. Wir freuen uns sehr, dass wir sie zum zweiten Mal schon hier haben, und die beiden werden uns jetzt gleich auf Englisch erzählen, was es mit diesen wichtigen Themen auf sich hat. Vielen Dank.
Vielen Dank, Miriam. So, I switch now to English. Yeah, and also, yeah, we sit.
I don't know. We can do whatever.
We can sit. Yeah, okay. In the middle.
We can sit in the middle. Okay.
Yeah. My presentation should come in a second, but yeah, I'm very excited to be here today and to be able to tell you about my residency, my research project at Victoria and Albert Museum about sustainable circular fashion, actually. And I'm very happy to have Mila here from label Tauko to support me and to help us in understanding how the fashion industry can be more circular. Circular variables is the title of this talk, but is also the title of my final presentation from these 2 months of research I did at the museum. And variables is, now it sounds better. Variables is to be understood as important aspects of the system that can also result into challenges and opportunities for the system. The aim of my research was that of actually find out the bigger picture of circular fashion, but also I wanted to look into the disruptive potentials of new technologies and try to understand what are these new technologies, how are they going to change in a circular way the fashion industry. I started creating this circular framework, so I looked into the different phases of the fashion supply chain, and I kind of highlighted important cycles in the cycle. I connected them, and then I clustered together the business models, the technologies that are connected to these very specific cycles. What I did then is finding out the importance of this meta level. So you see in the middle there's another cycle that is actually kind of disconnected from the wall, but it's essential for the establishment of the wall circularity. So in the meta level you find practices such as certification, policymakers, education, information, campaigning. So all very, very important practices as well, not in the industry itself, but essential for the establishment and for closing this circle. And then I went on making some interviews. I chose some of these labels and the practices around, and I started collecting data on my wall in the studio and of making a visual mapping of my results of the data collected. So all these papers you see on the ground, these are the famous variables that I first put on the ground in a very random way, and then at the end of my research I clustered into some circles or triangles, depending on the time, and I clustered them into potential of change, challenges and necessities of the system, and these are actually the results of my research. yeah, this is me putting threads around and seeing how all these projects are connected together and how all these variables are interconnected. So the start of my research, as I said before, was at the museum, looking at what they have in their collection. And one part, very interesting, an exhibition they had on last year, was about biological or like synthetic biotechnologies. And I was very inspired by those. I was like not really understanding what it is, and maybe you also don't know what synthetic biotechnology is, so I will just shortly explain about it. This is like let's say an interdisciplinary area, bringing together principles from the engineering to principles of biology, which means that we can create materials growing bacteria or through fermentation processes. And for fashion, it is very interesting in the sense that we can create alternative materials for example, leather or silk. One of the projects, and the one in the picture, is called spider silk. And it is actually a silk made out of the fermentation process of a protein contained in the spider web. So very exciting. And I talked to them, was very, very interesting also to hear that they are researching on this already since 10 years and the research is going on. They did some capsule collections together also with big brands in the UK and in US. Yeah, sorry, wrong direction. And yeah, these are some pictures of their lab. And actually, yeah, the materials are grown in this cylinder here, in these machines, through the fermentation. It's quite inspiring. And inspiring is also to know that they can actually fine-tune some of the characteristic of the fiber, just working on the proteins in lab. So they can decide which color this fiber will have. They can decide which elasticity, which resilience. And this is quite impactful, because it actually means that in the future, they can reduce the amount of chemicals involved in the production of these fibers. They can possibly actually avoid the total use of chemicals. And yeah, so it's a great project. I could interview 4 or 5 businesses working in this direction and all doing research, and I kind of understood that is like they are strategies for the futures, that these kind of materials are unfortunately not yet on the market on a bigger scale. So we know a lot of examples of mushroom leather, and we are now going closer to these proteins, fibers, but yeah, there's unfortunately not the possibility at the moment to buy these materials on a bigger scale. And I started to ask myself also, can actually biology do it better? Is a kind of a key question in the sense that are these new technologies actually working in another system? Are they working in a circular way? Yes, of course, they use renewable input, they have closed loop system where they recycle water, but are they changing the system? Or are they finance in the same framework, within the same framework of the fast fashion? Are they going to create materials that are going to be bought by the fast fashion? And I was very inspired by one article I read by 2 researchers, UK-based researchers, Dr. Daisy Ginsberg and Nachai Chiesa. They wrote this question. They asked themselves, can biology do it better? Or we are just skipping from one, like being dependent from like some not renewable resources, some renewable resources, and we are just skipping to the next one. Like, for example, sugar. If we want to mass produce spider silk, or if we want to mass produce mushroom leather, we need such big amount of sugar. The earth probably is not able to support this kind of agriculture. We have to change our agriculture system. So I actually understood that these new technologies, they can't be disruptive in the way I thought, if they are not finding their political and social dimensions in changing the system they work within. Yeah, the same kind of scenario I encountered looking at chemically made cellulosic fibers. One example is the orange fiber. You might know this, I don't know, but is a fiber made out of the cellulosic extraction from orange peels, so from the leftovers, the bioproducts of the food industry, which is quite interesting and actually quite fantastic that one industrial cycle can feed the next industrial cycle. But at the same time, I realized, okay, yeah, so orange fiber, they are, oh, sorry, it jumped a little bit. Now. They are actually overseeing all the processes to make the orange pulp into a purified cellulosic pulp. But they are not really, they're not responsible for what is happening later. Like companies buying this pulp, they can do whatever they want. They can use dyeing, they can use chemicals, they can blend the fibers with polyamide, polyester, making these fibers not recyclable at all or very difficult to be recycled. The same is for tencel. We all know, okay, tencel is one of the most sustainable fibers we can find on the market right now. They have a reforestation, for the ones who don't know, tencel is a cellulosic fiber made out of the eucalyptus trees. And actually the company itself is very sustainable. They have this reforestation system program. They have a closed loop system that is recycling water and components for 99%. Yeah, like they actually make a pure cellulosic pulp, which is totally biodegradable and compostable, and you can actually almost eat. But what's happening later with this? Also, they can't control. After these two interviews, I understood that, yes, of course, they are all potential circular fibers, but the fact that there are these infrastructures like that, they can't control actually the what's happening on the supply chain, on the steps later. It makes it really difficult to have proper closed-loop fibers. So they can claim that they make closed-loop fibers, but actually, as consumers, we should really kind of look if they are really like compostable or not. We should look if they are blended or not. So also these cellulosic technologies were not really fitting in my disruption idea I had at the beginning, and I was quite frustrated after 3 or 4 weeks of research. I was like, oh my God, everything what I thought at the beginning is not. And so I actually started to look at the present, at today, looking at what can actually be really disruptive in our society, what can make such a big change impact that the system is going to change. And I found that waste is going to become one of the major disrupting factors in our societies. It is already. Actually, waste is becoming one of the next frontier for cities, to face for cities in looking into reducing solid waste. Our consumption patterns are, we are consuming and throwing away at such rapid speed that nor charities or textile recyclers, they can actually really handle the quantities of second-hand clothes we produce, we generate with our consumption. And also some markets overseas that were used to buy our second-hand for very low prices, they are actually now closing their markets, their borders to us. So this is becoming very disruptive. And at the same time, what we don't see is what's happening in the industry, in the production country. It is estimated that up to 47% of everything what is produced, every material on every production level in vertical factories is already generated by the production processes as waste. So considering that between 100 and 150 billion of pieces of garments are produced yearly, like we can imagine how much this 47% becomes. It's a huge quantity of hidden waste, but it is hidden only from our eyes. Actually, in these production countries, it's not hidden at all. It's like dumped on the street, is left rotten everywhere on the fields, and is becoming an environmental emergency. Yeah, so I talked a lot about problems, but there's a lot of different strategies that we can use already from the design stage in order to reduce this quantity of waste, from recycling to upcycling over zero waste, pattern cutting. And I'm very happy to have Mila here to talk about her beautiful project Tauko. She's a pioneer in this upcycling. And yeah, I just leave you the word.
Okay, thank you, Arianna. I'm really happy. Maybe I try. Super happy to be here. Tauko is a Finnish fashion brand, and we started around 10 years ago to work with recycled textiles. The first things that we did was recycling very like home textiles. So we went through all kinds of flea markets to find vintage tablecloths and things that we could use for our designs. And during the first years, we were experimenting on that and finding what kind of material works for us. And it was basically home textiles then that we decided to use. But then there came a point when we started to think, what can we actually do? Like, how can we produce smaller batches that we're not so bound into these single pieces that we find in flea markets? And it happened so that we had an intern who was a nurse by her first profession. And we asked her, where do the hospital textiles go after, like, how does it work with the hospitals and with the textiles? And she said that there's this big rental company who rents the textiles or the service for the hospital, meaning that the hospital in itself doesn't own the textiles, but buys this service. From this chain, we found a company, a rental company, that was delivering all the bed linen for Helsinki area. And we asked them what happens to these textiles when they don't need them anymore. And they said that they are being burned. We started to look into that, what kind of textiles these are, and if we could actually use them. And we realized that they are of very high quality. So here in the middle is a typical scene from these laundry places. They are industrial laundry houses that are in every single, I would say, like small to mid-size city in Europe has one of these that provides the rental services for healthcare, meaning hospitals, but also for restaurants and hotels. So say a hotel in Finland, in Helsinki, has very similar bed linen than the one in Munich, which means that they are having the same kind of products in Helsinki, in the laundry place, as here in Munich, which results in the fact that there's huge amounts of the same product, same kind of textiles that are being basically burned. It is said that it's about 150 kilos per day in these like mid-sized companies that they get textile waste each day. And this is a like small company still. So in the longer run, the amount is super big. And as Arianna said, these are these cycles that we don't really see. The production is, like the production system, the rental textiles production system is kind of thought as effective as possible. And this means also that burning the waste is effective for them. They don't have to do any kind of sorting whatsoever. But in the end, they are also people who are really proud of their textiles. And they are working with them for a long time, and they were really open. They were super happy to hear that there is someone who is even thinking about reusing these textiles. They are made to last, so they are usually 50% cotton, 50% polyester, just because of also the maintenance of the textiles is easier. As Arianna said, also it makes them more difficult to recycle. So in order to recycle them, you have to separate the fibers. So we decided that we will give them a new life. This is maybe giving you a little bit of an impression of how it works. So looking from you on the left side, this is from Lappeenranta, from Finland, from a very small city, and this is a laundry place there. They have two in Lappeenranta. On the bottom there, this is actually from Berlin. So we work also with the German companies because we wanted to see how different the textiles in Germany are compared to Finland, and the result was that no, they are exactly the same. So, like in principle, we had also this idea that we could have production bases where our sales are happening. So if we decide to have a lot of sales, so we would start marketing and doing a big effort to have German customers, we could dress you with the German bed linen and not the Finnish one. But this is then showing the fashion pieces, the pieces from our latest collection. But maybe, I think these like concrete examples are really the easiest. I'll put my microphone now away so I can show you. So this is really the bed linen that we start with. So they come in different colors, usually quite pale colors. Mint green is one of the favorites. They also have it in white and in pale blue. And then what we do is we dye them in different colors. So we get, for example, this is now coming actually to our autumn collection, the yellow from there, orange yellow. And we did nothing else, but we dyed it. So we didn't go to like fiber level, so it is very, like we try to use it as it is to like reduce the amount of production, not using so much of natural resources at any stage of the production. And this is then the final piece that we made. This actually here, we try to also find ways that we don't have to actually dye the clothes or the textiles. So the bottom part is made from a garment that was actually the similar color that it is now. And these are wearables. You can wash them, you can wear them, they are everyday use. So there's nothing like, they are not specific in that sense. And you can't tell that they are made out of recycled material. I'll get back to the microphone now. But yeah, and here are the two people working in Loksa in Estonia, which is roughly 100 kilometers from Helsinki in Estonia. And what is nice about the production method that we are having, we can keep it very local. So the idea is also that there is nothing, we don't have to develop another infrastructure for it. We don't have to we don't have to build a new factory for it. But actually everything is there already. So we are using the infrastructure that is there. In Finland there's a little bit of textile industry left. You have few dyeing companies. Similar situation is here in Germany. So we also did production here. So finding the local dyeing companies that still exist, using them, working with the sewing companies that are there. So I find that very interesting as well. So you don't have to go to the Far East to do the production or find the leftovers of the textile factories there, but you can really focus on the local things, and then you actually know how they are produced, who are the people who are working for them. I think I used my time. Maybe we can, maybe we will have some time for questions afterwards.
Yes, yeah, definitely. Thank you, Mila. And
Thank you.
also, I just want to add that, everything is so clear and transparent in Mila's production that you can actually know exactly from the fibers, from the fabrics, where this is coming from, how it was dyed, where it was dyed, how it was produced, where it was designed, where it was cutted, and which people, the names of the people even was before on the hand tags you had. Like which people actually made these clothes. This is a kind of amazing and unique example of making the industry circular and transparent. And just to jump shortly, I think I have only 5 minutes left, but yeah, just to go back to our waste, another extremely promising strategy, which is totally underestimated, is mechanical recycling of textiles. Mechanical recycling is actually doesn't need much big investment. The technology exists already. It exists for wool, it exists for cotton. But one of the big problems of it is not just that we don't have the right infrastructures, but also there are some economical issues linked to the fact that big labels, the big brands, they all committed now to very high goals in circular economy, calling themselves, claiming to going to become completely circular till 2030. So they are all jumping into different ways of recycling, which it makes very hard for these recyclers to keep up with the work. Why is it like that? So like this, I had some interviews with some businesses in Europe, but also these interviews confirmed just what I heard already in Prato in Italy some years ago. I did already research in this kind of industry. And yeah, actually what happens is these big brands, they come with a lot of money and the big orders, but actually they want huge amounts in a very short time, and they are not, they don't want to pay the price. They actually, the smaller brands would pay for these recycling yarns. So this is squeezing the recycling, mechanical recycling industry within the supply chain. It's not helping them in growing. I talked with one of the biggest in Valencia, from Europe, and they told me, yeah, we are not growing. We have so much work. We had to change completely the way and the times we were used to work, and we're not really having more profit out of this. It's only stress. So again, this circular economy, where is the problem? It still wants to work within the fast fashion. This is not going to work. Yeah, so this one of the biggest results of my research, there's the need of a change, a systemic change on all different levels, not only the industrial one and the technological one. And I want to finish with one of the most important variables I found, and I connected to all the projects that I interviewed during this time, which is the one of consumption patterns. Consumption patterns, it is a need for the system, but it's also a challenge, a big challenge. Without a change in the speed we buy, in the quality of the clothes we buy, and in the way we perceive the purchasing of fashion, there won't be any transition in a circular way. So it is very important to also to reflect at our own consumption patterns. Yeah, and it's very beautiful to be here and talk about it here, because I know that all of you already are aware about it, otherwise you wouldn't be at this fair. And this is the first step to start buying more consciously and to help the industry and the politic to create this circular framework. So thank you very much. Yeah.